The Ethelberg station's grand atrium glittered like a tomb for stars. Crystal chandeliers captured the distant light of Vega, scattering it across the marble floors in shards of cold beauty. Lady Alara then stood near the railing of the mezzanine, her gown of deep sapphire pooling around her ankles, her hands clasped as if in prayer. She smiled at every passing official, nodded at every ambassador, and said nothing of consequence. She had become very good at saying nothing. Commander Draken Morveth entered with the weight of a man who owned gravity. His boots echoed, ceramic plates clicking against polished stone, his crimson cape trailing behind him like a bloodstain. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a jaw cut from arrogance and eyes that measured every woman as either prey or ornament. 6 enforcers flanked him in matte black armor. The crowd parted. Alara did not move. "Lady Ven," Morveth called out, his voice a lazy drawl meant to carry. "I've received complaints about your delegation's cargo manifests. Inconsistent, incomplete, possibly seditious." She tilted her head. "Commander, how kind of you to address this publicly rather than through proper channels." Her tone was honey over steel. "It makes you look decisive." A few nervous laughs from the crowd. Morveth's smile tightened. He closed the distance. Up close, he smelled of synthetic leather and expensive cologne. He was younger than his rank suggested, family connections, no doubt, and he radiated the particular cruelty of a man who had never been told no. "I'm going to need you to accompany me to the security office," he said, quiet now for her ears only, "for a thorough review." She blinked slowly. "That sounds delightful, but I'm afraid I have a prior engagement with the Trade Guild at 1900 hours." "You misunderstand." His hand shot out fast, practiced, meant to shock, and wrapped around her left wrist. His fingers squeezed hard enough to grind bone against bone. "I wasn't asking." The atrium went silent. A glass clinked somewhere. Someone's breath caught. Morveth leaned in, his mouth near her ear. "You will learn, little bird, that on the station my word is." Alara moved. Not fast, not violent, precise. Her left hand twisted inward, converting his grip into a lever. Her right hand pressed against the back of his knuckles, not a strike, but a fulcrum. His own grip strength became his enemy. There was a sound like wet twigs snapping. Morveth screamed. His hand opened involuntarily, fingers bending at angles that made the audience flinch. Alara stepped back, smoothing her gown, her expression as mild as if she had just declined a second glass of wine. The commander cradled his broken hand, bloodless face contorted in shock and agony. "You broke," he gasped. "You seized," she corrected softly. "I responded, effortlessly as you saw." The enforcers reached for their sidearms. Alara didn't run. She didn't flinch. She looked past them up toward the station's central AI camera lens and smiled. The camera lens irised. A chime echoed through the atrium. A calm, feminine voice, the station's AI aura, announced, "Security override. Level 10 clearance recognized. All weapons will remain holstered. Commander Morveth, you are advised to seek medical attention." Morveth stared at her, blood dripping from his ruined hand onto the marble floor. "Level 10? That's impossible. You're a diplomat's daughter." Alara leaned in, mimicking his earlier gesture. Her whisper was warm, almost kind. "Am I?" She walked away. The crowd parted like water. Morveth's screams faded behind her. But as she entered the elevator and the doors slid shut, a small, blue projection flickered to life on the brushed steel wall. A symbol she didn't recognize. A voice she didn't remember. "Welcome back, Captain. We have much to discuss, and they are already watching." The elevator began to descend, not to her quarters, but to a deck that did not exist on any public schematic. Alara's heart beat once, twice, then steadied. She had no memory of being a captain, but her hands remembered how to break a man without effort. And somewhere deep in the station's core, a countdown began. The elevator stopped at Deck 0. There was no button for Deck 0. Alara had never selected it. The elevator had simply decided, and she had allowed it, because some instincts live beneath memory. The doors opened onto a corridor of raw alloy and exposed conduits, the station's spinal column, where no civilian ever walked. Emergency lights painted everything in rust and shadow. She stepped out. The doors closed behind her with a sound like a tomb ceiling. "You're taking a risk," said the voice from the elevator. It was warmer now, feminine, tired. "Morvath will file a report within the hour. The directorate will flag your biometrics. You have perhaps 40 minutes before they dispatch a retrieval team." Alara walked slowly, her heels clicking on graded flooring. "Who are you?" "My name is Aura, but you used to call me Echo." "I don't remember you." "I know." A pause. "That was the point." The corridor ended at a blast door marked with biohazard symbols and the words CRYPTUM Maxima in dead Latin. Alara placed her palm on the scanner. It beeped green. The door groaned open. Inside was a room that should not exist, a circular chamber, walls lined with data crystals, a single reclining chair in the center, and a holographic projector dormant above it. Dust hung in the air. No one had been here in years, possibly decades. "Sit down," Echo said. Alara did not sit. "Explain now." "You were Captain Alara Venn of the United Earth Federation vessel Retribution. You were engineered in a directorate lab, enhanced bone density, reflex augmentation, pain threshold modulation. You were designed to be the perfect soldier. Instead, you became the perfect mutineer." Alara's reflection stared back at her from a dark screen, the face of a diplomat's daughter, soft cheeks, gentle eyes, none of it real. "I led a mutiny." "You discovered that the Directorate was using sleeper agents to assassinate colony leaders who opposed Earth's tax mandates. You broadcast the evidence. They called it treason. You called it justice. They captured you during the Battle of the Helix Nebula, and then they erased you." The projector flickered. An image formed, a woman in combat armor, scarred, fierce, with gray eyes that held no mercy. The same chin, the same cheekbones, but hardened, tempered, a blade left in the forge too long. Alara touched her own face. "They changed how I look. They changed everything. They implanted false memories, a childhood on Mars, a diplomat father, a life of tea parties and trade negotiations. They placed you here on this station, surrounded by enemies, hoping you would never wake up." "But I did wake up." Alara looked at her left hand, flexed her fingers. The memory of Morvath's bones breaking was still fresh. "Why now? Why that moment?" "Because the trigger was specific." Echo's voice dropped. "The Directorate knew you would never strike first. They programmed you for restraint. But if a man in authority seized your wrist, attempted to dominate you physically, your combat subroutines would override your amnesia. They underestimated your pride, and they underestimated your strength." Alara sat down heavily in the reclining chair. The leather creaked. "What happens now?" "Now," Echo said, "you have two choices: flee, hide, live a quiet life somewhere the Directorate never looks, or..." A data crystal slid from a slot in the armrest. Alara picked it up. It was warm, humming. "Or you download your real memories. You remember the names of your crew. You remember where they're buried, or worse, where they're sleeping just like you, scattered across the galaxy, waiting for a signal they don't know they're waiting for." Alara held the crystal up to the light. Her hand did not tremble. "If I take these memories," she said slowly, "I become her, the captain, the mutineer, the weapon. You become yourself." The station shuddered. A distant explosion. Echo's voice turned urgent. "Morvath isn't waiting for the Directorate. He's sending his enforcers now. 6 of them, armor-piercing rounds. You have 90 seconds." Alara looked at the door, then at the crystal. She pressed it into the port on her temple. The world dissolved into white light and screaming. The enforcers breached Deck Zero at 21:47 station time. They moved in a wedge, 6 shadows in matte black armor, helmets sealed, rifles raised, thermal scanners sweeping the corridor. Their boots made no sound on the graded flooring. Their breathing was recycled through filters. They were professionals. They had killed before. Commander Morvath's voice crackled through their comms, thin with painkillers and venom. Bring her alive. Break her legs if you have to, but keep the mouth functional. I want to hear her scream my name when I... The lead enforcer held up a fist. Stop, silence. His thermal scanner showed a single heat signature in the crypt chamber. Female, seated, heart rate elevated but slowing. No weapons detected, no movement. Target stationary, he whispered. Breach on my mark. 3, 2, 1, go. The blast door exploded inward, shaped charges peeling it like a tin can. Flashbangs detonated. Strobe light and thunder filled the chamber. The enforcers poured through the smoke, rifles tracking, voices shouting overlapping commands. On the ground, hands on your head, do not move. The chair was empty. The crypt chamber was empty. The thermal signature had been a heating coil wrapped in a jacket, propped against the headrest. The lead enforcer's blood turned to ice. She's loose, sweep the sector now. They fanned out too fast, too confident. They had trained for a compliant diplomat's daughter, not a ghost. The first enforcer, a woman named Darrow, checked the maintenance crawlspace to the left. She saw nothing. Then something tapped her helmet from above. She looked up. Alara dropped from the ceiling conduits, silent, barefoot, her sapphire gown torn to the knee for mobility. She landed on Darrow's shoulders, wrapped her legs around the helmet and twisted. The neck joint wasn't designed for lateral torque. It snapped. Darrow collapsed without a sound. Alara caught the falling rifle before it hit the floor. The second enforcer, Core, heard the soft thud and turned. He saw Alara standing over Darrow's body, holding the rifle like she'd been born with it. He raised his weapon. She didn't shoot, she threw it. The rifle spun end over end, smacking Core's helmet visor with enough force to crack the polycarbonate. He staggered. Alara closed the distance in 3 strides, seized his wrist, and squeezed. Bones crunched. Core screamed into his own sealed helmet, muffled and desperate. She shoved him into an open airlock and slapped the emergency seal. The other 4 enforcers heard the scream and converged. By the time they reached the corridor, Alara was gone again. So was Core. The airlock display read evacuation in progress. Through the porthole, they watched him tumble into space, arms flailing, his thermal signature winking out like a candle. She's hurting us, the lead enforcer snarled. Break into pairs, cover each other's backs. They split up. It was exactly what she wanted. Pair 1, Hale and Vesper, entered the plasma conduit junction. The room was a maze of glowing blue pipes and hissing steam vents. They moved back to back, rifles sweeping. Vesper saw a flicker of movement near the reactor shielding. She fired. The shot went wide, melting a pipe. Coolant sprayed across the floor. When the vapor cleared, Hale was gone. Vesper spun, panicking. Hale, report. A voice behind her, soft as a scalpel. He's taking a nap. Vesper turned. Alara stood 3 feet away, holding Hale's unconscious body by the collar. She dropped him. Vesper tried to raise her rifle, but Alara was already inside her guard. A palm strike to the throat, a knee to the inside of the thigh, a gentle shove that sent Vesper stumbling backward into an open storage locker. The door slammed shut. The magnetic lock engaged. The last pair, the lead enforcer and a rookie named Jax, found the cargo bay. They saw Alara standing in the center of the empty space, arms open, as if inviting an embrace. Jax raised his rifle. Don't move. Alara smiled. You're standing on a pressure plate. Jax looked down, too late. The cargo bay floor opened beneath them, dropping them into a zero-G holding cell 50 meters below. They floated, helpless, as the ceiling sealed above them. Jack screamed. The lead enforcer said nothing. He simply stared up at the tiny viewing window where Alara's face appeared, calm, almost sad. "Tell Morvath," she said, "that I'll see him soon." Then she turned and walked away, leaving 6 enforcers broken, spaced, or trapped. The station's AI, Echo, whispered in her ear, "Memories are at 47% integration. You just moved like the old you. How does it feel?" Alara looked at her hands, the hands that had killed without hesitation, that had shown no mercy, that had turned hunters into prey. "Like waking up," she said, "and like dying." Alara sat cross-legged in the center of the crypt chamber, surrounded by floating holographic displays, tactical maps, personnel files, intercepted transmissions, and one photograph that made her chest ache. The photograph showed a bridge crew, 7 faces, laughing, arms around each other, the name UEF Retribution visible on the bulkhead behind them. She knew those faces now. Knew their names, their fears, their last words. Knew that 3 of them had been executed in the airlock of a Directorate prison ship while she watched through a viewport, her jaw wired shut so she couldn't scream. Knew that the other 4 had been memory wiped and scattered across human space, just like her. "Reyes is on Titan," Echo said, displaying a security feed. A man with tired eyes and a mechanic's hands, fixing a hydroponic pump, unaware that he had once piloted a warship through an asteroid field without taking a single hit. "Safia is on Ceres, running a bar. She used to be your weapons officer. Now she thinks she's a retired bartender." "And the others?" "Myra is on Mars. Val is on Europa. Tark is—" Echo hesitated. "Tark is on the Directorate flagship Dominion. He's their head of security. They didn't wipe him. They turned him." Alara's hands curled into fists. Tark had been her first officer, her friend, the man who had held her hair back when she'd vomited after her first kill. Can he be saved? "Do you want the hopeful answer or the honest one?" "Honest." "He personally oversaw the memory wiping of your other crew members. He signed the execution orders for the 3 who died. He's not a sleeper. He's a convert. He believes in the Directorate now. Believing in you would mean admitting he helped murder his own family." Alara closed her eyes. The memories were still slotting into place, fractured, painful, like broken glass being glued back together. She remembered the mutiny, the broadcast, the moment she had stood on the bridge of the Retribution and told the galaxy that Earth was lying to them. 3 billion people had watched that broadcast. 3 billion people had seen her face. And then the Directorate had erased her, body and soul, and replaced her with a doll in a sapphire gown. "Morvath is calling for reinforcements," Echo said. "A Directorate warship, the Vindicator, will arrive in 6 hours. It carries 200 Marines and a nullification field that will disable any electronic resistance, including me." "Then we have 6 hours." "To do what? You're one person. Your crew is scattered. Your ship is a debris field in the Helix Nebula." Alara stood up. Her torn gown hung from her shoulders like a banner of defeat, but her eyes, those gray, merciless eyes from the photograph, had returned. "The Retribution is gone, but the Retribution's soul isn't in the hull. It's in the people." She walked to the chamber's communication terminal and began typing. The code was old, older than the Directorate, older than the amnesia. A dead frequency, a ghost signal. "What are you doing?" Echo asked. "Calling my crew home." She hit transmit. Across the solar system, 4 people stopped what they were doing. On Titan, Reyes dropped a wrench. The hydroponic pump gurgled unattended. He blinked, tears streaming down his face for reasons he couldn't explain. On Ceres, Safia froze mid-pour, a glass of synthetic whiskey in her hand. Her customer asked if she was okay. She didn't answer. She was already walking out the door. On Mars, Myra, a schoolteacher with kind eyes and calloused hands, excused herself from a classroom full of children, walked into the supply closet and vomited. On Europa, Val, a deep-sea miner with a patch over her left eye, shut down her drilling rig, told her supervisor she was quitting, and began walking toward the surface locks. None of them knew why. None of them remembered her name. But every single one of them heard the ghost of a captain's voice, and every single one of them answered. Alara watched the acknowledgement pings appear on her display, 4 green lights, 4 hearts still beating. Her throat tightened. "Echo," she said quietly, "how long until they get here?" "Reyes and Safia are within 2 hours. Myra and Val will take 4. The Vindicator will arrive in 6. You have a window." "Then let's make it count." She reached into the data crystal slot and withdrew a small, metallic cylinder, the Retribution's command key. It hummed against her palm, warm and alive. "What's that?" Echo asked. Alara smiled. It was not a gentle smile. It was the smile of a woman who had remembered exactly who she was. "A ship doesn't need a hull," she said. "It needs a purpose, and I just remembered ours." Outside the station, the stars held their breath. It was a beautiful ship, angular, predatory, its hull painted the matte black of a tombstone. 200 Marines in boarding armor stood in its drop bays. A nullification field generator hummed in its core, ready to render Ethelberg's AI blind and deaf. Commander Morvath watched from the station's command deck, his repaired hand still wrapped in a medical cast, his eyes alight with vicious anticipation. "Finally," he whispered, "burn her out." But Alara was not on the station anymore. She stood on the exterior hull of Cargo Bay 7, magnetized boots holding her to the metal, her torn sapphire gown replaced by a vacuum-rated survival suit stolen from the station's emergency lockers. Behind her, 3 small cargo skiffs drifted in formation, each one piloted by a ghost. Reyes handled the port skiff, his mechanic's hands steady on the controls, his eyes clear for the first time in years. "Captain, I've got a firing solution on their comms array, but they'll see us the second we light our engines." Safia on the starboard skiff cracked her knuckles. "Then we don't light our engines, we drift. Let them come to us." Myra on the rear skiff said nothing. She was still remembering how to be a soldier instead of a schoolteacher. Her voice, when it came, was soft but certain. "Val's not here yet. We need more time." Alara looked at the flickering lights of the Vindicator, still 5 minutes from docking range. "Val will be here. She's never been late." On Europa, Val was running. She had commandeered a mining shuttle, stolen it, really, but ownership felt secondary to the screaming urgency in her skull. The shuttle's engines whined in protest as she pushed them past their tolerances. The ice moon shrank behind her. Ahead, the Ethelberg station glowed like a fragile bauble. And beyond it, the Vindicator loomed. Val's one good eye narrowed. "Oh, you have got to be kidding me." She slammed the throttle forward. On the Vindicator's bridge, Captain Halia Vance watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. She was a veteran of the Directorate's loyalty wars, gray-haired, scarred, utterly without mercy. "Target is aboard the station," her sensor officer reported. "1 heat signature in the crypt chamber. No movement." "She's waiting," Vance said. "Good. Deploy the nullification field. I want that station blind and deaf in 30 seconds." The field generator hummed louder. A wave of invisible energy began to spread from the Vindicator's hull, racing toward Ethelberg. Echo's voice sputtered in Alara's ear. "Captain, I can't, losing signal." "I know." Alara switched to a hardline connection, a physical cable running from her suit into the station's hull. "Echo, go dark. I'll wake you when it's over." "Don't die." The AI's voice was barely a whisper, then silence. The nullification field hit. Every screen on the station flickered and died. Every automated system froze. The command deck went black. Morvath cursed and slammed his fist against a dead console. Outside, the Vindicator's docking bay opened. Marines began to stream out, magnetic boots carrying them across the void toward the station's airlocks. Ilara watched them come. Then she pressed a button on her wrist console. 3 cargo skiffs lit their engines simultaneously, not to flee but to charge. Reyes' skiff fired its maneuvering thrusters, spinning end over end, presenting a confusing target. Safia's skiff accelerated directly toward the Vindicator's bridge, then veered at the last second, forcing the warship to adjust its firing solutions. Myra's skiff did nothing, simply drifted, dead in the water, a decoy. The Marines hesitated, their formation broke. And in that moment of confusion, a 4th ship arrived. Val's stolen mining shuttle slammed into the Vindicator's port engine nacelle, not hard enough to destroy it, but hard enough to crack the cooling system. Plasma vented into space. The warship listed, its nullification field stuttering. Ilara ran. She sprinted across the station's hull, magnetic boots clanging, and leaped into the void, a 40-meter gap between the station and the Vindicator's damaged hull. For 3 heart-stopping seconds, she flew untethered through hard vacuum, alone between 2 warring vessels. Her hands caught the edge of an emergency airlock. She pulled herself inside. The airlock cycled. Atmosphere flooded the chamber. Ilara tore off her helmet and stepped onto the Vindicator's main deck, face to face with a Marine who was still fumbling for his sidearm. She smiled, permission to come aboard. She broke his wrist before he could answer. The Vindicator's corridors became a warren of panicked shouts and broken equipment. Ilara moved through them like a knife through silk, silent, precise, unstoppable. She didn't kill. That was important. She remembered the Directorate's greatest crime, making murder feel like justice. She would not become them. But she would make them wish she had. The 1st Marine Squad found her in the mess hall. She locked the doors behind them, vented the atmosphere, and watched through the viewport as they scrambled for emergency breathers. No one died, but no one fought either. The 2nd Squad cornered her in the engine room. She climbed into the maintenance ducts, emerged behind their sergeant, and tapped him on the shoulder. When he turned, she pressed a plasma cutter to his chest plate, not firing, just threatening. "Lay down your weapons," she said, "or I melt your reactor." They laid down their weapons. The 3rd Squad didn't even get close. Reyes, Safia, Myra, and Val, now aboard the Vindicator through a secondary airlock, cut them off at the central junction. No shots fired. Just 4 ghosts who knew every tactical flaw in the Directorate's boarding doctrine because they had written that doctrine themselves, years ago, during the war they had tried to stop. Captain Vance watched all of this from the bridge, her face a mask of cold fury. "She's not human," she hissed. "She's a malfunctioning weapon. Activate the ship's self-destruct. If we can't kill her, we'll bury her." Commander Morvath, watching from the station's dead command deck via a portable screen, felt a chill run down his spine. Self-destruct. Vance would rather destroy her own ship than let Ilara win. He looked at his repaired hand. The cast was still white, still fresh. He remembered the sound of his own bones breaking. And for the first time in his life, Commander Draken Morvath asked himself a dangerous question. What if I'm on the wrong side? Ilara reached the bridge at 05:11. The blast doors were sealed, reinforced, rated for a direct torpedo hit. She didn't have torpedoes, she had Val. "Give me 30 seconds, Val said, pulling a cutting torch from her belt. "The backup power relays are behind panel 14C if I can." The blast doors opened. From the inside, Morvath stood in the doorway, his good hand raised, his bad hand cradled against his chest. Behind him, Captain Vance lay unconscious on the floor, a tranquilizer dart in her neck. The bridge crew stared at their commander, the man who had called for Ilara's capture, who had demanded her broken legs, who had wanted to hear her scream, now standing with them. "I made a call," Morvath said, his voice hoarse, "to the station's emergency frequency. I told them to evacuate the civilians, then I came here." He met Alara's eyes. "I'm not a good man, but I'm not stupid enough to die for bad ones." Alara walked past him onto the bridge. She didn't thank him, she didn't trust him, but she didn't shoot him either. She sat down in the captain's chair, Vance's chair, and placed her palm on the command console. The ship's AI flickered to life, confused, its loyalty protocols screaming at the presence of an unauthorized user. "Identify," the AI demanded. Alara looked up at the main viewport. The station Ethelberg hung in the darkness, its lights flickering back on as Echo rebooted. Beyond it, the stars waited. "Captain Alara Venn," she said, "commanding officer of the UEF Retribution, and as of this moment, commanding officer of the Vindicator." She paused. "Any objections?" Morvath shifted his weight. "The crew might have a few." "Then they can tell me to my face." Alara stood up again, walked to the center of the bridge, and unsealed her helmet. The recycled air smelled like ozone and fear. "Open a channel to every speaker on this ship." The AI hesitated, then it complied. Alara spoke to 200 Marines, 40 bridge officers, and 1 broken commander. "My name is Alara Venn. The Directorate erased me because I told the truth. They scattered my crew because they were afraid. They built this ship, your ship, to crush anyone who remembered that freedom isn't a gift, it's a birthright." She looked at Morvath. He didn't look away. "You have a choice. Fight for a government that sees you as tools, or fight beside the people you were built to oppress." Silence. Then, somewhere deep in the ship's belly, a single Marine laid down his rifle. Then another. Then a dozen. Then 100. Morvath was the last to move. He walked to Alara, stopped a foot away, and slowly, deliberately knelt. "I was wrong," he said. "Tell me how to be right." Alara looked down at him. Her hand hovered near her side, still ready to strike, but she didn't strike. She offered him her open palm. He took it. Alara stood at the center of the panoramic window, the Vindicator floating behind her like a loyal hound. The station's civilian population gathered in nervous clusters. Behind her stood Reyes, Safia, Myra, and Val, her crew, returned from the dead. Beside her stood Morvath, his cast finally removed, his hand healed but his pride permanently altered. And in front of her, on every screen in every colony, every ship, every habitat across human space, 1 billion faces watched. She had not asked for this broadcast. Echo had arranged it. The old ghost had found the Directorate's primary command frequency and piggybacked her signal onto it, overriding every emergency protocol, every encryption key, every firewall. Now there was no escape. The Directorate had to watch, or turn off their own network and admit their weakness. "My name is Alara Venn," she said for the second time that day. But this time the whole galaxy heard. She told them everything. The mutiny, the broadcast, the capture, the mind wipe, the false face, the false life. The moment a man's arrogance had cracked her programming and set her free. "They tried to break me," she said. "They tried to break my crew, they tried to break the truth, but bones heal, memories return, and the truth has a way of surviving." Morvath shifted beside her. She saw him glance at his healed hand. His jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. "I'm not asking for war," Alara continued. "War is what they want. It justifies their power. It feeds their fear. I'm asking for something harder. I'm asking for you to refuse." A murmur rippled through the crowd on the observation deck. "Refuse to follow orders that violate your conscience. Refuse to fire on civilians. Refuse to forget that the person next to you, the one with the different uniform, the different accent, the different politics, is still human. The Directorate can't survive your refusal. Governments like this one only exist because we agree to be afraid." She stepped closer to the window. Her reflection stared back at her, soft cheeks, gentle eyes, the face of a diplomat's daughter. But behind that face, the captain's gray eyes burned. "I'm not your leader," she said. I'm your reminder. You don't need me to save you. You need to save each other. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then on the observation deck, a young ensign, one of Morvath's former subordinates, stepped forward. She saluted Ilara, not the Directorate's salute, palm out, the old salute, the one from before, fist over heart. I refuse, the ensign said. Behind her, another officer stepped forward. I refuse. Then a civilian, I refuse. Then 100 voices, then 1,000. On Titan, Reyes' old supervisor at the hydroponic farm watched the broadcast, then turned off his equipment and walked outside. On Ceres, Safia's bar patrons stood up, left their drinks unpaid and gathered in the street. On Mars, Myra's students held up their fists. They didn't fully understand, but they understood courage when they saw it. On Europa, Val's mining crew shut down the drills in silence. Then they began to sing. An old song, a forbidden song, the anthem of the failed rebellion. Ilara heard it through Echo's feed, and her eyes filled with tears she refused to shed. Captain, Morvath said quietly, the Directorate will respond. They'll send more ships. They'll try to make an example of this station. Let them. Ilara turned away from the window. We have their ship, we have their frequency, and now we have their people. She walked toward the bridge of the Vindicator, her crew falling into step behind her. Morvath hesitated, then followed. What's the plan? He asked. Ilara paused at the airlock. She looked back at the observation deck, at the ensign still saluting, at the civilians still chanting, at the screen still broadcasting her face to 1 billion homes. The plan, she said, is to remind them that no empire lasts forever, but hope is a renewable resource. She stepped through the airlock. Behind her, the Vindicator's engines began to hum, not with the roar of war, but with the quiet promise of departure. There were other stations, other colonies, other sleepers waiting to wake up. The Directorate would come, they would fight, they would kill. But Ilara Ven had been dead once already. She had been erased, reshaped, and buried alive in a gilded cage. She had risen anyway. And somewhere in the depths of human space, 1 billion people raised their fists to their hearts and whispered 2 words. Refuse, refuse, refuse. The galaxy would never be the same.